Good afternoon, boys and girls. Today we start our last chapter of Percy Jackson, chapter 22. Now, I want you to pay close attention because there are some plot twists in here that I think you guys might be surprised by as you read them today. So, here we go. You guys ready? Okay. Chapter 22 The Prophecy Comes True. We were the first heroes to return alive to Half-Blood Hill since Luke, so of course everybody treated us as if we won some reality TV contest. According to camp tradition, we wore laurel wreaths to a big feast prepared in our honor. Then led a procession down to the bonfire, where we got to burn the burial shrouds our cabins had made for us in our absence. Annabeth's shroud was so beautiful, gray silk with embroidered owls. I told her it seemed a shame not to bury her. She punched me and told me to shut up. Being the son of Poseidon, I didn't have any cabin mates, so the Ares cabin had volunteered to make my shroud. They'd taken an old bedsheet and painted smiley faces with X'd out eyes around the border, and the word loser painted really big in the middle. It was fun to burn. As Apollo's cabin led the sing-along and passed out s'mores, I was surrounded by my old Hermes cabin mates, Annabeth's friends from Athena and Grover's satyr buddies, who were admiring the brand-new searcher's license he'd received from the Council of Cloven Elders. The council had called Grover's performance in the quest brave to the point of indigestion, horns and whiskers above anything we had seen in the past. The only ones not in our party were Clarice and her cabinmates, whose poisonous looks told me they'd never forgive me for disgracing their dad. That was okay with me. Even Dionysus's welcome home speech wasn't enough to dampen my spirits. Yes, so the little brat didn't get himself killed, and now we'll have an even bigger head. Well, who's out for that? In other announcements, there will be no canoe races this Saturday. I moved back into cabin 3, but it didn't feel so lonely anymore. I had my friends to train with during the day. At night, I lay awake and listened to the sea, knowing my father was out there. Maybe he wasn't quite sure about me yet. Maybe he hadn't even wanted me born. But he was watching, and so far, he was proud of what I'd done. As for my mother, she had a chance at a new life. Her letter arrived a week after I got back to camp. She told me Gabe had left and mysteriously disappeared off the face of the planet. In fact, she reported him missing to the police, but she had a funny feeling they would never find him. On a completely unrelated subject, she sold her first life-size concrete sculpture entitled "The Poker Player" to a collector through an art gallery in Soho. She'd gotten so much money for it, she put a deposit down on her new apartment and made a payment on her first semester's tuition at NYU. The Soho Gallery was claiming for more of her work, which they call a huge step forward in super ugly neo-realism. But I don't worry. My mom wrote, I'm done with sculpture. I've disposed of that box of tools you left me. It's time for me to turn to writing. At the bottom, she wrote a P.S. Percy, I found a good private school here in the city. I put a deposit down to hold you a spot, in case you want to enroll for 7th grade. You could live at home, but if you want to go year-round at Half-Blood Hill, I'd understand. I folded the note carefully and set it on my bedside table. Every night before I went to sleep, I read it again, and I tried to decide how to answer it. On the 4th of July, the whole camp gathered at the beach for a fireworks display by Cabin 9. Being Hephaestus's kids, they weren't going to settle for a few lame red, white, and blue explosions. They'd anchor a barge offshore and load it with rockets the size of Patriot missiles. According to Annabeth, who'd seen the show before, the blast would be sequenced so tightly they'd look like frames of animation across the sky. The finale was supposed to be a couple of 100-foot-tall Spartan warriors who would crackle to life above the ocean, fight a battle, and then explode into a million colors. As Annabeth and I were spreading a picnic blanket, Grover showed up to tell us goodbye. He was dressed in his usual jeans and t-shirt and sneakers, but in the last few weeks he started to look older, almost high school age. His goatee had gotten thicker, he put on weight, his horns had grown at least an inch, and he now had to wear his Rasta cap all the time to pass as human. I'm off, he said. I just came to say, well, you know, I tried to feel happy for him. After all, it wasn't every day a satyr got permission to go look for the great god Pan. But it was hard saying goodbye. I had only known Grover a year, yet he was my oldest friend. Annabeth gave him a hug. She told him to keep his fake feet on. I asked him where he was going to search first. Kind of a secret, he said, looking embarrassed. I wish you could come with me, guys, but humans and Pan, we understand, Annabeth said. You got enough tin cans for the trip? Yeah. And you remember to read pipes? Geez, Annabeth, you're like an old mama goat. But he didn't really sound annoyed. He gripped his walking stick and slung the backpack over his shoulder. He looked like any hitchhiker you might see on an American highway. Nothing like the little runty boy I used to defend from bullies at Yancey Academy. Well, he said, wish me luck. He gave Annabeth another hug. He clapped me on the shoulder and then headed back through the dunes. Fireworks exploded to life overhead. Hercules killing the Nemean lion, Artemis chasing the boar, George Washington, who, by the way, was the son of Athena, crossing the Delaware. Hey, Grover, I called. He turned at the edge of the woods. Wherever you're going, I hope they make good enchiladas. Grover grinned, and then he was gone, the trees closing around him. We'll see him again, Annabeth said. I tried to believe it. The fact that no searcher had ever come back in 2,000 years. Well, I decided not to think about that. Grover would be the first. He had to be. July passed. I spent my days devising new strategies for capture the flag and making alliances with the other cabins to keep the banner out of Ares' hands. I got to the top of the climb wall for the first time without getting scorched by lava. From time to time, I'd walk past the big house, glance up at the attic windows, and think about the oracle. I tried to convince myself that its prophecy had come to a completion. You shall go west and face the god who has turned. Been there, done that, even though the traitor god had turned out to be Ares rather than Hades. You shall find what was stolen and see its safe returned. Check. One master bolt delivered, one helm of darkness back on Hades' oily head. You shall be betrayed by one who calls you a friend. This line still bothered me. Ares had pretended to be my friend and then betrayed me. That must be what the oracle meant. And you shall fail to save what matters most in the end. I had failed to save my mom, but only because I let her save herself, and I knew that was the right thing. So why was I still uneasy? The last night of the summer session came all too quickly. Campers had one last meal together. We burned part of our dinner for the gods. At the bonfire, the senior counselors awarded the end of summer beads. I got my own leather necklace, and when I saw the bead for my first summer, I was glad the firelight covered my blushing. The design was pitch black, with a sea green trident shimmering in the center. The choice was unanimous, Luke announced. This bead commemorates the first son of the sea god at this camp, and the quest he undertook into the darkest part of the underworld to stop a war. The entire camp got to their feet and cheered. Even Ares' cabin felt obliged to stand. Athena's cabin steered Annabeth to the front so she could share in the applause. I'm not so sure I'd ever felt as happy or sad as I did at that moment. I finally found a family, people who cared about me and thought I had done something right. And, in the morning, most of them would be leaving for the year. The next morning, I found a form letter on my bedside table. I know Dionysus must have filled it out because he stubbornly insisted on getting my name wrong. Dear Peter Johnson, if you intend to stay at Camp Half-Blood year-round, you must inform the big house by noon today. If you do not announce your intentions, we will assume you have vacated your cabin or died a horrible death. Cleaning harpies will begin work at sundown. They will be authorized to eat any unregistered campers. All personal articles will be left behind will be incinerated in the lava pit. Have a nice day, Mr. D. Dionysus, Camp Director, Olympian Council, number 12. That's another thing about ADHD. Deadlines just aren't real to me until I'm staring one in the face. Summer was over, and I still hadn't answered my mother or the camp about whether I'd be staying. Now I had only a few hours to decide. The decision should have been easy. I mean, 9 months of hero training or 9 months of sitting in the classroom. Duh. But there was my mom to consider. For the first time, I had the chance to live with her for a whole year without Gabe. I had the chance to be home and knock around the city in my free time. I remember what Annabeth had said so long ago on a quest. The real world is where the monsters are. That's where you learn whether you're any good or not. I thought about the fate of Talia, daughter of Zeus. I wondered how many monsters would attack me if I left Half-Blood Hill. If I stayed in one place for a whole school year without Chiron or for my friends around to help me. Would my mother and I even survive until next summer? That was assuming the spelling test and 5-paragraph essays didn't kill me. I decided I'd go down to the arena and do some sword practice. Maybe that would clear my head. The campgrounds were mostly deserted, shimmering in the August heat. All the campers were in their cabins packing up or running around with brooms and mops, getting ready for the final inspection. Argus was helping some of the Aphrodite kids haul their Gucci suitcases and makeup kits over the hill where the camp's shuttle bus would be waiting to take them to their airport. Don't think about leaving yet, I told myself. Just train. I got to the sword fighters arena and found that Luke had the same idea. His gym bag was plopped at the edge of the stage. He was working solo, wailing on a battle dummy with a sword I'd never seen before. It must have been a regular steel blade because he was slashing the dummies' heads right off, stabbing through their straw-stuffed guts. His orange counselor's shirt was dripping with sweat. His expression was so intense that his life might have really been in danger. I watched fascinated as he disemboweled the whole row of dummies, hacking off limbs and basically reducing them to a pile of straw and armor. They were only dummies, but I couldn't help but being awed by Luke's skill. The guy was an incredible fighter. It made me wonder again how he possibly could have failed at his quest. Finally, he saw me and stopped mid-swing. "Percy." "I'm sorry," I said, embarrassed. It's okay," he said, lowering his sword. "Just doing some last-minute practice. Those dummies won't be bothering anybody anymore." Luke shrugged. "We build new ones every summer." Now that his sword wasn't swirling around, I could see something odd about it. The blade was two different types of metal, one edged bronze and the other steel. Luke noticed me looking at it. "Oh, this? New toy. This is Backbiter." "Backbiter?" Luke turned the blade in the light and so it glinted wickedly. One side is celestial bronze, the other is tempered steel. Works on mortals and immortals both. I thought about what Chiron had told me when I started my quest, that a hero should never harm mortals unless absolutely necessary. I didn't know they could make weapons like that. "They probably can't," Luke agreed. "It's one of a kind." He gave me a tiny smile, then slid the sword into his scabbard. "Listen, I was going to come looking for you. What do you say we go down to the woods one last time, looking for something to fight?" I don't know why I hesitated. I should have felt relieved that Luke was being so friendly. Ever since I'd gotten back from the quest, he'd been acting a little distant. I was afraid he might resent me for all the attention I've gotten. "You think it's a good idea?" I asked. Oh, come on. He rummaged in his gym bag and pulled out a 6-pack of Cokes. "Drinks are on me." I stared at the Cokes, wondering where the heck he'd gotten them. There were no regular mortal sodas at the camp store. No way to smuggle them in unless you talked to a satyr, maybe. Of course, the magic dinner goblets would fill with anything you wanted, but it just didn't taste the same as real Coke straight out of the can. Sugar and caffeine, my willpower crumbled. Sure, I decided, why not? We walked down to the woods and kicked around for some kind of monster to fight, but it was too hot. All the monsters with any sense must have been taking siestas in their nice cool caves. We found a shady spot by the creek where I'd broken Clarice's spear during the first Capsule Flag game. We sat on a big rock, drank our Cokes, and watched the sunlight in the woods. After a while, Luke said, "You miss being on a quest? With monsters attacking every 3 feet? Are you kidding?" Luke raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, I miss it," I admitted. "You?" Shadow passed over his face. I was used to hearing from the girls how good-looking Luke was, but at the moment, he looked weary and angry, and not at all handsome. His blond hair was gray in the sunlight. The scar on his face looked deeper than usual. I could imagine him as an old man. I lived at Half-Blood Hill year-round since I was 14, he told me. Ever since Talia. Well, I trained and trained. I never got to be a normal teenager out there in the real world. Then they threw me one quest, and when I came back, it was like, okay, ride's over, have a nice life. He crumpled his cocaine and threw it into the creek, which really shocked me. One of the first things you learn at Camp Half-Blood is don't litter. You'll hear from the nymphs and naiads. They'll get even. You'll crawl into bed one night and find your sheets filled with centipedes and mud. The heck with laurel wreaths, Luke said. I'm not going to end up like those dusty trophies in the big house attic. You make it sound like you're leaving. Luke gave me a twisted smile. Oh, I'm leaving. All right, Percy. I brought you down here to say goodbye. He snapped his fingers and a small fire burned a hole in the ground at my feet. Out crawled something glistening black about the size of my hand. A scorpion. And that's where we're going to end today. Okay. So now we kind of come to a interesting stopping point. We're going to read the rest tomorrow. But what I want you to do right now, I want you to head into Google Classroom, answer the question, answer the exit of the question. I want you to make a prediction about what is happening right now. All right, friends. You guys have a great afternoon, and I will see you tomorrow.